Hi everyone, and welcome along to another video. This bit of gear is a Cossor 343 ganging oscillator, otherwise known as a Cossor wobbulator. This will wobulate down from 100 kilohertz up to about 20 meg. You need a valve oscilloscope because it needs quite a hefty sweep voltage, i.e. the time base output from your scope, to get this thing to work, and you connect it up with this terminal here. Now this is a 1930s design. I think this one was made in the Second World War and possibly saw military service. I don't know whether you can see. There's like a crown there with B183 ink stamped onto it. And internally some of the components have got tropicalised on them, or trop. So this one may have seen service in the Army or Air Forces or the Navy or something. Not sure. Anyway, I am pretty sure it was part of a rack mounted unit where you had the scope and this wobulator in a single rack unit, with the scope sat below the wobulator here. So what is it? It's basically a signal generator that you can sweep the output, and by that you can adjust your circuits so they're more in tune, so you can visually adjust. If you put wobbulator into YouTube, you'll see Bob Anderson using one. I think he uses an RCA WR55 or something. I'm sure you've seen these sort of pictures anyway, and that's what you'd see on your scope or something very similar. But anyway, this is a project that I'm working on. Internally it's in very good nick. Externally, you know, it's been used. This dial should be like a silver, more of a silver plate like these. This is the range switch here, and this is the sweep bandwidth here. But yeah, so the dial has seen a bit of use. I think you can get like a silver, it's not a polish as such, like a silver dippy thing, and you can replace some of this silver plating, silver nickel plating, so I may do that. The case itself I might respray, but this is a unit that I'm not going to be sort of putting on my bench because I've got all this stuff, and yeah, and it's big and it's heavy. And this is the output here, and this socket's been changed, and when we take a look at the inside we'll have a look at the back side of it. It's like an oversized RCA socket, and you've got the attenuators here, and then like a fine attenuation there. So let's flip it over and have a look at the inside. Right, here's the inside of this 343 wobulator. I've not actually touched anything inside it at all. It's pretty clean inside. I suspect it's been dry stored all its life, and it's still got the Cossor rectifier, which is quite rare. It's a 431U. My other one's missing the rectifier and this valve here, but it's in pretty good nick. Anyone familiar with British radios can see this is, you know, these are 1930s valves, sort of 1930s components. These are the tropical, each of these capacitors, these wax capacitors, has got trop on the end. So it's been tropicalised, which makes me think it definitely is a military spec one. I don't know what the difference is other than that. I don't believe it's ever been worked on. Someone's taken, I'll flip it over in a minute. Now this is quite a heavy bit of equipment. It's about 25 to 30 pounds once you get the case on. I'm not sure whether it'll be staying in here or just put under my bench for storage. I've got a pretty full workbench at the moment, and I need to either remove some gear, which is a sort of a bit of a because I use all of it, or I'll just get a bigger workshop, or this comes out as and when needed. I think probably the latter. So as you can see, it's got various transformers here. It's got a transformer there. I think that's a choke, I think. There's another choke on the underside in the power supply. But very well built, very well engineered as well. Alright, let's flip it over and have a look at the underside. Right, here's the underside of the unit. As you can see, more 1930s resistors and things. Someone's actually changed that socket there. It's, I don't know what it actually is. It's like an oversized RCA phono socket, but yeah, about half the size again. Just see it if I put my hand over, just see it there. It's much bigger, but of the same sort of engineering design as the RCA, but it's not. So there's a box here that usually fits over here, because this is the step attenuator, and then the fine control here. So these are all switches, and then you've got your fine control. Then you've got some trimmers here. They set the calibration of the unit. Just see some trimmers on the outside there. Lots of mica capacitors, which we don't seem to have too much trouble with UK made ones. When I bought this unit, let's get a pointer, there was something rattling about inside, and what had happened is, I think with the shock of this unit being moved, this ferrite core here had come unstuck from the adjusting thing in the coil. I've pushed it back in. It's quite a snug fit, but I think it's got to come out, and I'm going to have to recalibrate that particular coil. And I've read online that these units are a bit of a nightmare to calibrate, because you can't get an accurate frequency out on a frequency counter, because there's so many harmonics coming out of it. Lots of trimmer capacitors there. But, yeah, certainly a well engineered unit. I like all these covered wires. It's sort of highly varnished, much better quality than a radio, you know, of a similar vintage. With this, this is the bottom of the electrolytic, and I have reformed that, but it got down to a certain point, and it didn't seem to want to know anymore. And it certainly, the voltage, the rectified output from the rectifier through this, it's showing that the volts are a little bit low, so I might have to take that out and restuff that. And that's my plan really. This is in such good condition really that capacitors like this I'm going to restuff, so I don't put all modern components in here. I just like keeping things like this as original as I can, because these aren't particularly common. I think quite a few vintage radio people have got them, but they, I guess they weren't, as they would have been quite expensive. There won't be so many of these about. which is probably a good thing because they're heavy units. This one was designed to sit in a rack mount, or this particular one. You had the, I think it was the oscilloscope below this in like a rack, and this one's got like a screened box, and you can see from the dirt lines here where that sort of shield sat, and then I guess that the rack, you screwed it into the rack using these screw holes here down the side. Yeah, so anyway, this is going to be my next project at the moment, in conjunction with that CT52 oscilloscope, and hopefully we might be able to see a wobbled output for domestic broadcast receivers, because I've got wobulators that will do FM. I mean, there's one here, you know, for 10.7 megahertz IFs. This is what I use, this Sencor. But for broadcast receivers, I don't think you generally need it, but I would like to see how it works, and you know, if I can get them receiving any better, or the sensitivity any better, and the sound any better. It's just an interesting project, really. Right, so thanks for watching, and we'll see this one on the bench again very soon.